Let's move on to Wong Kar-wai's take on the wuxia genre.
Yes, this was Ashes of Time, and I should perhaps note that I was watching the 2008 redo version, or Redux version, which in the main appears to be broadly the same as the original version, apart from some more aggressive colour grading. Highly aggressive. We'll come back to that. Originally released back in 1994 to, I gather, a politely baffled response for completely relatable reasons. Certainly a wuxia film in the literal definition of the term, but not in the highly fantastical, super jumping wirework shenanigans that was the typical movie translation. It's more grounded in a very literal sense than the likes of Fong Sai-yuk or Chinese Ghost Story or the later Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I rather regret giving myself this to-depth plot recap, as it's a little obtuse. It is, in what's perhaps become a Y staple technique, split into a few stories based around Leslie Cheung's Ouyang Feng, initially a middleman connecting mercenary fighters to those seeking to hire them, typically for revenge, who later becomes a warrior himself. I mentioned this as being told through some not completely clear non-linear flaming. This may be confusing to some people, pointing no fingers at myself. Further complicating things is mercenary friend Huang Yashi, big Tony Leung Kai-Fai, has shown up on the way, killing a group of bandits to steal a horse, which will, in a way, precipitate most of the rest of the film's events. The remnants of that gang eventually looking for revenge. But before that, he's brought with him a bottle of wine, which a witch claims will steal memories. This may or may not actually work on Huang. It's not clear. In fact, so many things are not clear to me in this film that it's perhaps best served skipping over any attempt at a plot recap entirely. As the film progresses, we're introduced to segments more or less focused on each of Little, Tony Leung Chung-wai as the blind swordsman, Jackie Chang as Hong Kui-yugong, a beggar looking to become an assassin, Charlie Young as the perfunctorily named Girl with Mule, a poor villager looking for vengeance for her brother killed by Imperial goons, and Bridget Lin as Murong Yang and Murong Yin, who is either a woman, sometimes pretending to be a man, or possibly actually is supposed to become a man, given the genre, although at all times looking like a woman, even when she's a man. Look, I'm not saying this film's impenetrable, more that I was not able to penetrate this. We are a matron. Now, perhaps it's clearer if you know the bones of the classical work that this is setting itself up as a prequel to, but as a first introduction to these characters and their actions, I'm left with questions. Actually, I'm not sure I'm given enough information to form those questions, other than who, what, where, why, how. So I find myself in the same position as when we spoke about Cao Shen's How's the Assassin back in 2016, which is to say, it's doing a great deal of things that I'd ordinarily be extremely irritated by, but somehow the atmosphere and the visuals power through it, and it's left me somewhat entranced by it. It's a tough film to know who to recommend it to, however. There's not the usual quantity of action that's typical of wushu films, and what little there is atypical and somewhat more visceral than you might expect. If you're looking for a compelling plot to drive the action, well, there's not that, so there's strike two. And on the other hand, if you're looking more for a character piece, well, I don't think there's much for you there here again either. Again, I don't have any complaints about the acting, but I just don't feel there's very much revealed about any of the characters, and I get the impression, perhaps in contrast to Chungking Express, that the depth is very much there, but it's just never explored in any way meaningful to me. So, back to the visuals, which particularly the grading. It's an exceedingly saturated film, particularly the yellows, to the extent that a lot of people are claiming that it's an error. I don't know the truth of that, but given how strongly Wise used colour in his other work, I'm more inclined to believe it's intentional, giving parts of this the feel of an Edo scroll or something similar, but more culturally appropriate to China, I suppose. Once I'd got over the visual shock of this, I rather grew to like it, but I would happily hear counter opinions saying that it's really ugly. So, a real curate's egg of a film. I don't regret watching it in the slightest, but at the same time, I don't think I could recommend anyone else do without a cavalcade of caveats. Yes, very, very strange. I don't know what I watched.
I think we're very much on the same page here, Scott. I don't believe for a second that grading's accidental, because
it can't be,
yellow in the desert, especially given that the rest of it's fine. It's the other bits where it's very much desaturated. It's really washed out and brown.
Yeah, I've seen comparisons to what the original one was, and it is so markedly different. It's got to have been done for a reason, and the parts of it were so reshot. Well, not reshot, but kind of edited and worked around it. It's got to be intentional, but it could be easily seen if you just dropped it in at a random point of this and saw it like that. You'd probably be reaching for your color controls on the telly. It's very strong. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know whether I liked it or not, but there's certainly some really interesting looking bits. There's a few selections that show the action via reflection, and almost like a double reflection, but everything's upside down, and it looks really visually interesting. I really like those scenes.
Yeah.
The yellow, not so much, because it was very yellow.
Yes.
And some of the bits, some of the more brown bits just look kind of drab. But given that they were clearly deliberately so, it didn't bother me, rather than thinking, well, they just don't know how to colour grade or shoot or anything, you know. But as for the story and the characters, and I say story and characters, but it's because it's not really a watered down word to use in English. I had no idea what was going on or why, apart from, weirdly, the one bit that I thought was really obvious was like, well, this person is a woman pretending to be a man. When you first meet her, she actually describes herself as a woman, but there's clearly a woman because it's a woman playing it with a woman's voice, no attempt to disguise it.
Yeah.
And it's really, really clear. And then that's the one bit the film goes out of its way to explain.
Yes.
This was actually a person playing her. What? Wait, that's so weird. And that section goes on forever. Yeah, it's more of this complete lack of understanding of how people fall in love and stuff, because apparently guy Huang Guoxi, the Eastern heretic, he said he knew she was a woman disguised, but if you've got a sister, I'll marry her. And then apparently, well, he loves me like nobody else, and I'm the only person for him, and I love him now. Like, what?
Yeah.
You had a drink with one person once, and then you're now going to get him murdered because he didn't turn up the next morning.
Yeah.
This makes no sense.
I kind of wish I knew the languages, because I don't know if this is just a weird translation glitch. They've got their genders mixed up or something, because it seems like it's going out of its way to obfuscate something that was not very fustigated in the first place.
Because it goes out of its way to explain it too, so I don't think so. I think it's because it's really obvious, and they're not, because they aren't trying to hide it. That genre has a lot of is a really good female fighter, but she's not been allowed to fight, but she goes off to play and that sort of thing. And I mean, even Disney have done that with Mulan, but there's no attempt there. She's basically still wearing almost the same makeup as the brother as she is as a sister, you know. And there's no disguising the voice or anything. It's like, and then as I say, they spell it out entirely. The guy that's playing this fly in As Tears Go By, Jackie Chung, sorry, I can remember his name now. Yeah, he's you get a wee bit right in the middle of the film, and suddenly starts telling you what happened up, and he went to the north and became the leader of I don't care.
Yeah.
He didn't have a character. I'm not interested in what happened. Why are you telling me this? And there are strange bits in the editing notes, and this is the one bit where I was wondering if something had been, maybe a transitional scene been lost or something, because when Tony Leung is fighting 8,000 bandits or whatever on his own, at one point they all turn into men on horseback. They run into the outside of this hut or building, whatever it is, 8,000 of them all with swords and on foot, and then there's a cut to and suddenly they're all on horseback. I'm like, what's happening here? Is it the magical now? And there's but it looked more like something was missing. So because there are one or two wee bits like that too, that it does make you think, well, maybe the idea that there are mistakes in here are right. But honestly, because I didn't actually care, because there were no characters, and I didn't understand the story because there really wasn't one. Yeah, it's a weird film, because it's not really a wuxia film, because there's not all that much action in it.
No. I mean, I suppose in retrospect, it's what you might imagine if you'd told Wong Kar-wai to go and make a wuxia film. We perhaps shouldn't be surprised we found up with this, but I can imagine if you'd only heard the genre disclaimer going into this, you'd be, as I believe the reception was at the time, it's just, yeah, what was that? Because it's certainly not what anyone was used to, and certainly isn't like what anyone's used to now. I think a lot of what he was trying to do here might have actually been done better in things like Well, particularly House of Flying Daggers, I think, or maybe Hero, the kind of uses of colour and all that kind of stuff, and the way that kind of ties in with the story and segments it better. I think that might work better for those ones rather than what he's done here. But it's an interesting sort of step along that path to kind of take what was a fairly, again, standard trope-laden, well-explored genre at the time and give it a sort of fresh twist, which he's certainly done, but I don't think it's completely successful.
Interestingly, Hero had the same DOP, and Christopher Doyle. So he went on, he's worked a lot with Wong Kar-wai, but he went on to do Hero, so maybe he was bringing something from that too.
Very possibly, yes.
Yeah, it's just, because I think maybe you could see it as a kind of subversion of the genre, but at that point it's like it's so much of a subversion that it's almost more of a dismissal.
Yeah.
If that's the case. So I don't know. Yeah, it's a strange film, because once again I'm somewhat handicapped in that I do much prefer like narrative and character and mood pieces can have effect. I mean, there are some I like a lot, but they're not my preferred thing. So like, I'm always kind of searching for explanation of why people are doing anything, but when you're given nothing at all, basically, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I would say, I mean, for all my befuddlement with it, I really did find myself getting drawn into Ashes of Time more than perhaps anything else we've spoken about today. I can't possibly make a case for it being his best film, even in this list, but it was the one that I couldn't really divert my attention away from. It was the one I was always trying to struggle to make out what's the point of all this, what's going on, and it kind of dragged me along that path. Ultimately, at the end of it, I didn't really get any answers to it, but I quite enjoyed the journey, being pulled along with it. As I say, just a real curious egg. It's really interesting in a lot of ways, but not particularly successful in many of them. But I wouldn't, again, I don't know if I can dissuade anyone from watching it, particularly. I don't know if you're maybe either big into Y films, or if you're big into the wuxia genre, maybe you get something, still be able to pull something out of this. It's a really interesting film on a number of facts. It's good. Hard to say. Probably not. But, you know, it's interesting, and it's certainly got that going for it.
Yeah, but it does also have the same problem too of not having a Leiko central character, because you can maybe sort of see Leslie Chung as being, guess, a vaguely mystical figure in some ways, and maybe a bit of a wandering philosopher as well as a swordsman, but then at the same time he's suggesting that women prostitute herself to pay for his services, and then there's a pretty strong suggestion that he at least attempted to rape his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So, you know, not a good person.
Yeah.
And I really find it quite difficult to invest any emotion in a person like that, other than, you know, hoping that something horrible happens to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, certainly. I wouldn't necessarily dissuade anyone, but I wouldn't also encourage it either. Almost every film in this podcast, I'm in that kind of weird middle ground of like, you know, should I watch it? Yes, no? No, yes?
Yes. If you have nothing else to do, and let's face it, I think most of us have got more time than we want at this particular moment, it's maybe worth giving it a look in. But yeah, it's a very, very strange film indeed.
Have we persuaded you one way or the other, Craig?
No. I'm not going to watch this.